This is TWiT.
There, of course, is an app that I think everyone has at least opened once because there are a bunch of kind of built-in methods to access this app. And that means that you may not, sort of default to a third-party app for this. And that's Camera. Camera is, of course, the way that you take photos on your iPhone, your iPad. And it is a pretty powerful app. And I think sometimes because of the simplicity of the interface at first, you may not be aware of how much it can do. So what I want to do is pull up my iPad here. And in my iPad, I'm going to scroll down until I get to Camera. And here you can see a bunch of settings for the camera. So first and foremost is the formats option. And if we tap into formats, you can choose how you want your photos to be saved: high efficiency or most compatible. With high efficiency, the iPad or iPhone will save your images when they take them in HEIC or HEVC formats. And so what this essentially does is it will snap a photo or record a video, and it puts it into this package that is better at storing data in smaller size while maintaining a certain level of quality. You can also choose most compatible, which will shift it to that standard option of, I believe it's JPEG at this point. And so this will kind of make it so that regardless of what device you're using, you're able to access the photos that you have stored. Now, I recommend using high efficiency because it is very simple to change those photos from HEIC or those videos from HEVC to another format. Even in just exporting the photo from the Photos app, it can have that functionality built in. So it's nice to have the higher efficiency if you are a person who runs out of space. I think of that episode of The Office where Michael mentions that he has had to purchase a second phone because of all of the photos he needs to take of his child. And you don't have to buy a second phone. You can find, cleverer ways of storing these files. There are also, depending on what you're using, if you're using an iPhone or an iPad, there are going to be different settings here. But recording video, even on this iPad, this is an iPad Air, and we can record up to 4K at 60 frames per second using this iPad. I currently have it set to 1080p at 30 frames per second. I'm going to change that to 4K at 30 frames per second. You can see how much space it's going to use. And then you can also reduce frame rate so that if you have kind of lower light in your video, then it will go ahead and drop that frame rate because you need more light to get sort of quality out of a higher frame rate. And then if you'd like, you can also set so that in the camera, you will actually be able to control the video format. So that's a toggle to turn that on and off. I'll kind of quickly breeze through these others. Record slo-mo, of course, gives you the ability to record video at a slower, at a higher frame rate so that when you play it back at a typical frame rate, you're seeing more. And this is kind of a big thing that people who understand a little bit about film and a little bit about recording get. But if you don't exist in that space, this is important because typically, not typically, but occasionally what someone will do in order to record or to play back slow motion video is they will take video that they've shot at a normal frame rate, 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second, meaning that it's taking 30 photos every single second and putting those together. And they will essentially, to slow it down, they just stretch out each frame. So each of those 30 photos gets a little bit longer. So instead of 30 frames per second, it's for every second that's playing, you are showing, or for every 2 seconds, you're showing one frame, essentially. That is an inelegant way of doing slow-mo, because with slow-mo, what you want is to actually get more frames, more photos that will be captured, so that whenever you slow it down, it doesn't have this sort of stuttered feel, but instead is this nice smooth look as you're capturing each of those individual moments. So that is an important understanding with slow-mo. So if you were kind of trying to decide, do I want to record at 120 frames per second or 240 frames per second? Try to go for that 240 frames per second, because you're going to get a much smoother, better looking slow-mo. Preserve settings is just a way to tell the system, hey, when I make a change in the camera app, keep it that way or reset it. You can automatically scan QR codes whenever you bring up a photo. You can show detected text. So if you move your phone or your iPad over a form and you want to copy text from it, it will let you do that. I like to have under composition the grid turned on, and then there's mirror front camera, which will, with the camera that's facing towards you, mirror how it looks as opposed to it being direct. And then the other two features that are in the camera app on the iPad are scene detection and smart HDR. And with scene detection, this is a great feature where the system is essentially looking at the photo that you're about to take, determining what kind of photo you're taking, landscape, a portrait, a photo of food, whatever it happens to be, a still life. And it is making subtle adjustments to how it's capturing the photo in order to take a better photo based on what you're trying to take a photo of. So sometimes you'll see photos of food that just look terrible, and it has to do with the way that it was lit and the way that the white balance was. This is going to help with that a little bit. And then last but not least, smart HDR, which kind of uses a bunch of different captures that it takes at one time to show your photo and properly use a range of kind of exposures to that photo. Within the camera app itself, you've got your basic controls of zooming. You have the ability to capture a photo by itself, a video if you want to. We talked about slow-mo, time lapse, which of course lets you kind of keep your phone or your iPad steady and hit that button and record a very, 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 very long video. And the system will automatically and intelligently remove parts of the shot that need to be removed in order to A, save space on your device, but B, make that time lapse look good. And then there's the square option, which is, I kind of like this. I'll use this at times when I know I'm going to post this on something like Instagram. I'll go ahead and just frame it as a square from the get-go. And of course, pano, everyone's favorite, the ability to take a panoramic photo. There are a lot of other features built into the camera app, and we've had episodes on that in the past. But I don't know. Shout out to the camera app. Do you use, Dan, the built-in camera app, or have you made the switch to something third party that you stick with and you go back to every time?
You can take pictures on your phone. You're telling me this now? I just learned this. No, I do use the built-in camera app. There are a lot of great third-party camera apps. Obscura, Halide come to mind. But I tend to, I think, as you alluded, the convenience of the camera app in iOS just makes it so hard to get away from. But I think it's really full-featured. Apple has spent a lot of time with that. I appreciate all the features they've built in. You mentioned the grid, which is one of my personal favorites. I really enjoy that for composition and being able to sort of, line up and even level your photos and make sure you're taking a nice straight on photo. I take a lot of panoramas. And since I've got a young kid, I've taken more videos than I used to.
Aww.
For sure. Including some good slow-mo ones when we were down at the beach not that long ago. So it's the camera app. It feels like one of the things, right? They could have just left it to be super basic and just do, exactly the minimum they needed to do. But Apple actually spent the time and I think believes quite rightly that most people are going to start their journey, at least to the camera app, and it should offer all these capabilities.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. 94% of CIOs and CISOs agree that attracting and retaining talent is increasingly critical. You can stay current on your IT skills at ACI. For individuals, use the code TWiT30 for 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership at go.acilearning.com/twit.